Good afternoon, Central Texas. This is Grady Bourne. I'm Congressman John Carter's Legislative Director, and more importantly, I'll be your host and moderator for a teletown hall we're going to do with Congressman John Carter, your representative here in Capitol Hill, and not one, not two, but three of our good friends from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to address the many issues that are facing small business owners in Texas and across the nation. Most important, *3 on your phone will get you online to one of our call screeners to get in line to hopefully ask a question to the congressman or the three friends from the Chamber of Commerce. *3 on your phone is the magic number. We're going to get right to it. I'm going to kick it over to a couple remarks from the congressman, and then we'll hear from our Chamber of Commerce friends, and then we'll get into some questions, and it's going to be a great hour or so. So without any further ado, on to you, boss.
Well, welcome, everybody. This is John Carter, your congressman, and I'm really glad we can do this today. We're doing the series of these, trying to keep everybody informed. Our lives have been changed pretty drastically by this pandemic we're dealing with, and, people feel kind of lost and looking for answers. This is a chance. I hope you'll get some answers from this. Our chamber people are really on top of this. I know Jack. We invited Jack, and he brought with John Gonzales, and I didn't hear the name of the other person, but all are welcome to keep us well informed because this is not a moving target, but sometimes it seems that way. I want to emphasize to you that go to the banks where you have banking interests because, they are the people that have a real investment in you as a depositor and as a business, and they're getting more and more information every day, and they're going to want to help you. My wife has a saying that she told my son many, many years ago, if you don't ask, the answer is no. So go through the process and ask. I think you'll be pleased with the results. And now I'm going to turn it over to Grady and the chamber people. I'll be on the line with you. I appreciate all of you joining us, and I hope that everybody can use this tool that we've got available to keep your head above water as we go forward and hopefully get out of this mess in the very near future. God bless everybody, and I turn it over to the chamber.
Hey, boss, thank you very much. Remember, *3 on your phone to get in line. And we got three gentlemen from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. We got Jack Howard, John Gonzales, and Dan Mahoney. I'm going to kick it over to one of you fellas to kind of start off some quick remarks, and then we can get right to questions. So on to you, my friends from the Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, I'll get started. And what I want to do is just kind of give a real top-line overview of the program, just so we're all on kind of the same page. I know several of you have already probably had experience with the Paycheck Protection Program, maybe the EIDL loan, but I just wanted to kind of back up a little bit and just talk a little bit about some of the other features in there that I think will help people. In particular, there's a considerable amount of tax relief for individual taxpayers sometime in the next week or so, by the end of the month, according to Secretary Mnuchin. Individuals will be receiving $1,200 in tax rebates, $2,400 for a joint return, $500 per child. That's phased out for incomes above $75,000, $150,000 for people filing jointly. I just want to make sure people are aware that there's a very robust expanded unemployment provision in here, unfortunately. People are going to have to avail themselves of that. I saw this morning that there were another 6.6 million people who had to file for unemployment claims. And while we all hope that we won't see more of that, we are going to see more of that. So they really relaxed a lot of the restrictions that people usually have to comply with in order to receive unemployment benefits, as long as they're all related, obviously, to the coronavirus pandemic. All the usual qualifications are suspended, like how long you how long you worked, how long you had to wait. It's run through the state unemployment assistance program. It's not the federal system. And eligibility ends when an individual can return to work. They would receive an additional $600 per week on top of their usual state benefit until the end of July. So I just wanted to kind of start there Most of the tax relief will be going out in the form of direct deposits, and like I said, the vast majority of it will go into taxpayers' bank accounts by the end of April. There's a lot of provisions in there. I know we want to talk mostly about the small business impact, and we'll get to that. But there's a lot of provisions in there for employers of all sizes. A lot of very significant tax changes that are designed to improve the liquidity of a lot of business owners. That's for all employers. And remember, the whole idea of this bill, the whole overarching principle, is it's intended to be just a bridge to get to avoid a prolonged recession. We're going to find ourselves in a recession. The idea is to try to keep that recession as short as possible and give businesses and employers time to get their feet back on the ground until they can either stay open or reopen and rehire their employers. So that's the overarching framework for all this. So, like I said, there's several tax changes in there that we've worked hard to get included on net operating losses, the so-called qualified improvement property fix, accelerated recovery of AMT credits, increasing the limits on interest deductibility and things like that. So for all employers, those are kind of two key features, like I said, the overall goal being to increase liquidity for businesses who have no revenue or who have lost significant amounts of revenue. It's not really about trying to reduce their taxes. It's more about changing the timing of the payments so they have more access to that capital and more fluidity. So that kind of applies to all employers. To get to what I know everybody wants to talk about, the small business small businesses, self-employed, independent contractors, and nonprofits. I know you have several questions you want to ask. Hopefully I can, as I go through this, I can knock off some of them, and then whatever I don't get to, we can try to get to in the question and answer period. So this is the area, Paycheck Protection Program, getting the most attention. It's the program that's probably most furthest along at this point in terms of being implemented. Not fast enough, I understand that. But just, again, so we're all clear on kind of the baseline here. The idea of the program is to provide cash flow assistance through 100% federally guaranteed loans to employers who maintain their payroll throughout the course of this emergency. So if employers maintain the payroll, the loans are forgiven, which would help workers remain employed as well as help affected small businesses and our economy begin to bounce back faster after the crisis. The PPP program has several attractive features: forgiveness up to 8 weeks of payroll based on employee retention and salary levels. There are no SBA fees, and at least 6 months of deferral with maximum deferrals for up to a year. Small businesses and other eligible entities will be able to apply if they were harmed by the COVID-19 crisis between February 15th of 2020 and June 20th, and it would be retroactive to February 15th, 2020, in order to help bring workers back who have already been laid off back onto the payrolls. Where can you apply? Small Business Administration. Basically, if you are a 7A, if you're already qualified under 7A, you're qualified. There are some businesses that have been extended or have been added. It applies to independent contractors, self-employed. Hotels and restaurants would be covered as well under the Small Business Administration's NAICS standard. Particularly, it's the North American Industry Classification System, Code 72, as it applies to accommodations and food services, which are basically hotels and restaurants. As long as each of your individual locations has 500 employees or fewer, you are eligible. And that also applies for tribal businesses, 501c3, 19 veterans organizations, 501c3, nonprofits, including religious organizations. So that's who's eligible. Get a lot of questions about independent contractors or gig economy workers. Are they eligible? Yes, they are. I should point out that the application date for them is starts tomorrow, April 10th. Maximum amount of loan that you can borrow is equal to 250% of your average monthly payroll expenses, up to a total of $10 million. And so that amount is intended to cover 8 weeks of payroll expenses and any additional amounts for making payments toward your debt obligations. Important to note that the 8-week period may be applied to any time frame between, as I said before, February 15th, 2020 and June 30th, 2020. For those people who are in the seasonal business operation, their expenses will be measured using a 12-week period beginning February 15th, 2019 or March 1st, 2019, whichever the employer chooses. The covered period of the loan for which expenses can be forgiven extends from February 15th, 2020 to June 30th. As I said, you can choose which 8 weeks you want to count towards that covered period starting on February 15th. So in order to get the loan forgiven, the amount of principal that can be forgiven is equal to the sum of expenses for payroll, including benefits, existing interest payments on mortgages incurred before February 15, 2020, rent payments and leases in force before February 15, 2020, and utility service agreements for which service began before February 15, 2020. It's important to note, though, that at least 75% of the forgiven amount must be used for payroll. So in other words, it's expected that not more than 25% of the forgiven amount may be used for non-payroll costs. So if you want to use the PPP program for other business-related expenses like inventory, you can, but that portion of the loan will not be forgiven. In order to calculate the payroll cost, there's a lot of confusion over this. I just wanted to raise that here. And please check our website. We have a very good small business guide that walks you through. It's a checklist in terms of what actually, how you actually apply for the program, what counts as cost. But just to summarize quickly, payroll costs include salary, wages, commissions, or tips, capped at $100,000 for each employee. Employee benefits, including costs for vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave, allowance for separation or dismissal, payments required for the provisions of group health care, benefits, including the insurance premiums, and payment of any retirement benefit. I talked a little bit about how much of the loan will be forgiven. Remember, the purpose of the program is to help you retain your employee at their current base pay. So if you keep all of your employees, the entirety of the loan will be forgiven. If you still lay off employees, the forgiveness will be reduced by the percent decrease in the number of employees. So if your total payroll expenses on workers making less than $100,000 decreases by more than 25%, the loan forgiveness will be reduced by that same amount. If you've already laid off some employees, you can still be forgiven for the full amount of the payroll cost if you rehire those employees by June 30th, 2020. People ask, when will the loan be forgiven? It's forgiven at the end of the 8-week period after you take out the loan. Your borrowers you will work with your lenders to verify covered expenses and the proper amounts of forgiveness. Are you responsible for the interest on the forgiven loan amount? No. If the full principal of the PPP loan is forgiven, the borrower is not responsible for the interest accrued in the 8-week period, and the remainder of the loan is not forgiven. That is not forgiven will operate according to the loan terms agreed upon by you and the lender. What's the interest rate and terms for the loan that's not forgiven? It's 1%. When do you need to start paying interest? On the portion of the loan not forgiven, all payments are deferred for 6 months. However, the interest itself will continue to accrue over that period. If you want to pay your loan off earlier than 2 years, you can do that. There are no prepayment fees or penalties. In order to qualify for the loan, it's pretty relaxed terms. You don't need any collateral, and you don't need to personally guarantee the loan. Like I said, the loans for small businesses and sole proprietorships have already started last Friday. Starting tomorrow, independent contractors and self-employed individuals can apply. Now, this is going to be a problem. I just want to take a step back. As Congressman knows, Senator McConnell tried today to inject another $250 billion into the Paycheck Protection Program. So another $250 billion on top of the $349 billion. He had to do that by unanimous consent. It would have brought the whole total up to $600 billion. Unfortunately, Senator Schumer objected. The goal was for the Senate to pass that today by unanimous consent, and hopefully the House tomorrow by unanimous consent, because based on current projections, what I'm told, that this fund could run out of money next week. So for those of you who are contemplating or have not and are contemplating applying for this program, I would urge you to really hurry up and do it, because the money's running out fast, which just illustrates the depth of the need for it. The documents you need to apply for the PPP program, again, they're listed on the SBA website, Treasury Department's website, so I would encourage you to go take a look at that. Real quickly, it's all based on good faith certifications of the following factors: that the current economic uncertainty makes the loan necessary to support your ongoing operations. The funds will be used to retain workers, maintain payroll, or make mortgage, lease, and utility payments. That you have not and will not receive another loan under this program. You will provide to the lender documentation that verifies the number of full-time equivalent employees on your payroll and the dollar amounts of the payroll costs, as well as the covered mortgage interest payments, rent payments, and covered utilities for the 8 weeks after getting the loan. And of course, you have to certify that it's all honest and true and in good faith. So that's the gist of the PPP program. There are a variety of other small business debt relief programs that are available that I would encourage you to take a look at. Non-disaster SBA loans, in particular 7A programs, 504 micro loans. Under those programs, SBA will cover all loan payments on those SBA loans, including the principal, interest, and fees for 6 months. And that relief is available to new borrowers who take out loans within 6 months of the president signing the bill into law. The other main program that's aimed at small businesses is the economic emergency disaster loan program. And there, I just want to run through real quickly some of the requirements. Called idle loans. How much can you borrow? You can borrow up to $2 million. The interest rates for small businesses are 3.75%. For nonprofits, it's 2.75%. The terms are for up to 30 years, and the eligibility is based on the size, type of business, and financial resources that you have. What can you use the loans for? Fixed debts like rent, payroll, accounts payable, and some bills that could have been paid had the disaster not occurred. People who are eligible have to be a business with not more than 500 employees, have to be an individual who operates under a sole proprietorship with or without employees, or as an independent contractor, or a co-op with not more than 500 employees, a tribal small business with not more than 500 employees, and that's basically it. Business, also we get questions about agricultural cooperatives. You can also apply for that program. That's pretty much the gist of it. I did want to point out that there's an emergency grant program available for people under the EIDL program too, and that's a pretty if you can get, it's a pretty good thing to apply for. You can request an emergency grant of $10,000, even if you don't, and if you don't even receive the loan, you can still get it. It doesn't have to be repaid. The emergency grant within 3 days does not have to be repaid. And so that's basically how that particular feature works. So I think I've used up most of my time. I hope I've knocked off some of the questions, but I'll turn it back over to you, Brady.
Hey, appreciate it very much. And if I could ask my friends there at the chamber, when you start talking, please announce which one of you it is, just so we're all square on who's talking. Again, Grady, your moderator for this afternoon's Town Hall, *3 will get you in line to ask a question. And we got some absolutely outstanding questions. And we've been hearing really from businesses across Central Texas, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of businesses, and hearing a lot of the same concerns coming up. So I think I'm going to try to ask a couple of these to our friends at the chamber, and hopefully that'll address some of the concerns that you all have, and I'm seeing some of those also on our list. The number one thing we keep hearing from folks across Central Texas is they've applied for a loan through the lender, through the SBA. The big question is, what is the timeline for response? What do the fellows at the chamber know about that?
Well, I mean, statutorily, there's a timeline. However, in practice, SBA is just overwhelmed with applications, as you can imagine. As I said, the PPP program, according to current projections, could run out of money next week. As I understand it, SBA's loan application system actually crashed over the weekend, which obviously created a lot of backlogs at the banks and took a lot of time for the SBA people to actually try to put that back together again. So that caused a lot of delay. And so it's taken a lot longer than people would like. I saw an estimate this morning that SBA is processing $3.2 billion per hour. The short answer is not fast enough. But the impression I get from just some of the commentary and some of the financial people who are close to the program is that they seem to be working the kinks out as they go along. But again, it's we just have to remember this program has only been in effect in loss for 10 days, and they're trying to get $349 billion out to people as quickly as they can. And the banks themselves, the lenders themselves, it takes them a little while to understand all kind of the parameters of the program too.
And for sure, and that's the big question we're hearing from a lot of folks is the timing, and obviously it can never come fast enough.
Right.
We've also heard that some banks are only extending loans to businesses or customers they have an existing relationship with. Are banks allowed to do that, or is it a first-come, first-served kind of thing? How is that supposed to operate?
Well, it helps if you have a pre-existing relationship with your bank or your lender. That should expedite things or facilitate things a little bit. But I mean, some people are getting turned away. I mean, banks don't have to make the PPP loans, but from what I can gather, again, anecdotally, it sounds like in the case where where people are being turned away, the lenders are recommending other institutions where they might be able to go to try to get that assistance. And in terms of your question, first come, first served. Yeah, that's about right. Which is why the second phase of the program hasn't even started yet. That doesn't start until tomorrow. But already, they're afraid that they're going to run out of money by sometime later next week.
Great info. Again, folks, *3 on your phone. We're going to kick it over to one of our folks been waiting online. Bob is a small business owner. Got a question about filed for PPP, got some feedback from his bank about some specific forms and needs a little bit of guidance. So, Bob, you are on with all of our friends here at the Chamber of Commerce.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I make a living as a fishing guide in Bell County. I am as small as a small business gets. I'm a one-man sole proprietorship. When I initially applied for the loan, my bank came back and asked me for W-3s, for 940s, for 941s, so on and so forth. I don't have any of those things, never have, because
Mhm.
I simply take as draws from my gross earnings each month what I need to live on, and then I roll the rest back into my business. So my question is, once this process goes through and the application is that's in queue now is handled, because I don't have these things, am I in for a rude awakening or a surprise down the road after waiting, only to find out that because I don't fit into some certain mold, I'm not going to be able to qualify?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not I'm not familiar with the types of documents that they're asking you for. I mean, the application itself is I don't want to say it's simple, but it doesn't sound like it's anywhere near as complicated as that. It's on the SBA's website, and as I was saying earlier, in large part, really all the lender is looking for is for you to certify certain conditions under good faith. So if you can, I would encourage you to go on SBA's website and look at what the lender is supposed to be requiring, as well as what the borrower needs to supply.
Hey, folks, Grady again, your moderator for this afternoon's town hall with Congressman Carter and Jack Howard, John Gonzales, Dan Mahoney of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. We're going to go back and forth between live questions from the folks listening in and questions we've kind of accumulated through talking to hundreds of businesses over the last couple weeks, but I want to keep the live questions rolling. Al's got a great question about additional funds that might be available for small businesses who may not qualify for the PPP. So, Al, you are on with our friends from the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes. Well, my question is, so what if we do qualify for the PPP, but like the gentleman that just said, that it was just, he actually just said exactly what I was thinking, but I do have W-2 employees, but myself, I don't pay myself in the same manner as the W-2 earners. I disperse myself based on how the month is going. Will there be another program that will accommodate a person like myself? Because from what I have right now, yes, it will take care of the employees, but it will not take care of anything that I have, to protect me and my family.
Yeah, I understand. I would encourage you to talk through that with your lender. He may be aware of some additional assistance, but there are other SBA programs, as I was alluding to before, that might help. If you can't, the IDLE program, I would recommend you take a look at that. You might be able to qualify for that. The other aspect of the bill that I didn't really get into, because I know we wanted to just focus directly on small businesses, was Congress also appropriated $340 billion to state and local governments to provide assistance indirectly, possibly to people like you. I don't know, but it's support for a whole variety of different activities, primarily healthcare, law enforcement, and a lot of other. It's fairly broad based, so I can't guarantee that you would be able to get assistance from that. That's all run through the state. And then there's another $150 billion coronavirus relief fund that will provide state, local governments, and tribal governments with additional resources. So if you can't get direct assistance through any of the SBA PPP program, IDLE program, you might be able to get some short-term assistance through the state government by virtue of those funds.
Good intel, folks. Hey, Grady again, your moderator for this afternoon's Teletown Hall. Star 3 gets you in the line to ask some questions of our expert folks here. The restaurant industry has been hit especially hard all across the nation, and Kip's got an interesting question about how the PPP would benefit restaurant businesses that are closed. So, Kip, you're on with Jack, John, and Dan from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
Hi, thank you for having me on. I guess it's a similar question to the last question that was asked, but as a business owner or, as a landlord of a business that's a restaurant tenant, the biggest question I've had from restaurant tenants or restaurant owners, and I own a restaurant myself, if your restaurant's closed, you have no revenue coming in, do you recommend or how does it benefit a business to take the PPP loan if you rehire your employees but you have no revenues coming in?
Mm-hmm. Did it occurred between after February 15th, 2020?
Oh, say for example, if you're in business February 15th and middle of March you shut down because of the COVID issue. Yeah. And continue to stay shut down for an unforeseen time until you can reopen. And, we don't know what that's going to look like just yet. But, taking on more debt to pay employees, I'm just trying to make sense of it.
Yeah. As long as it occurred after February 15th, you could apply for the PPP program. And if you can reopen by June 30th, you would be eligible to have a good portion of that loan converted into a grant.
Great intel for sure. I'm going to go back to some of the questions that we've kind of accumulated over the last couple of weeks of hearing directly from hundreds of businesses. And this got touched on a little bit with some of the earlier questions, but is there an actual list of documents that an applicant must provide to qualify for the PPP? And is there a list of things that SBA is not asking for? Because there does seem to be a discrepancy of what one person is looking for, and then you go to the bank and maybe they're asking for something else. What's the disparity there, and how do businesses thread the needle on that?
Yeah, I would encourage you to go back and take a look at the Chamber's Small Business Guide. It lays it out in pretty good detail in terms of what documents are required and how you go about submitting them. And, again, the SBA website has the actual application on it. It'll tell you all the documents that you need to submit.
And you mentioned earlier in this call, $3.2 billion an hour.
Yeah.
If you've got $350 billion, do you have any sense of how much longer the funds will be available? It seems probably like a matter of days, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. No, you're right. That's why Senator McConnell tried to ask unanimous consent today to add another $250 billion to it. And unfortunately, the Senate Democrats have kind of a list of their demands, so they objected to that. The Senate's not going to reconvene until Monday. The goal was for the Senate to pass that by unanimous consent today. The House would try to do it by unanimous consent tomorrow, so it could be signed into law, and that fund would be replenished up to $600 billion. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon.
And I guess another question that we're hearing from a lot of folks is they've applied for one of the loans. How do they check on the status of their application? Is that an online process? Yeah. Is it called a lender? How does that work for folks that are trying to see what their status is?
Yeah. Well, that, again, the best advice I would have, I know that's a very frustrating situation. I'd try to check with your lender. My guess is the lender would just be checking with the SBA, either local official or checking the website himself. All I can say is just, keep checking.
Keep checking and stay in the fight. That's all we can do for sure.
Yeah, right. Don't give up.
Don't give up. That's the mantra for certain. Again, folks, *3 get you in the line to talk to one of our screeners and get you on to talk to our expert folks here. Going to go back to our live callers and maybe bring a little clarity, some issues that were brought up earlier. Leslie's got a great question about getting some clarity on what's retroactive to February 15 regarding the PPP. So, Leslie, you are on with Jack, John, and Dan from the U.S. Chamber. Leslie, can you hear us? She may have dropped out, but her question was, please clarify what is retroactive to February 15 regarding the PPP. Can one of you guys fill her in on that?
Yeah, basically that's how you go about applying for the loan. So whatever documents you need, if you can provide them so that they cover the period from February 15th going forward, they will do the best they can to, process that loan. It's essentially how they calculate the payroll expenses and associated costs that they will use as part of the formula to calculate how much of a loan you would actually get.
And we got another great question from another one of our great hardworking sole individual small businesses. Faith has got a question about how does the PPP become a forgivable loan for independent contractors who are the only employees. So Faith, you are on with Jack, John, and Dan with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
Hi. I am an independent contractor hairstylist, and so my overhead is my supplies and my rent. But besides that, I either put back into my business or else I feed my family and pay my home bills and things like that, but I am not incorporated. So how does the Paycheck Protection Act, how does it become a forgivable loan for me?
I'm not sure how to... John, do you know?
Hey, Jack, this is John Gonzales. What I know that since you're an independent contractor, tomorrow's the first day for you to be able to apply. Last I heard was it will be very similar to the current payment, because now it's sole proprietors, independent contractors, or self-employed are all eligible to begin applying tomorrow. So best I know is that it will, the program will be the same for those folks. But again, you cannot begin to even apply till tomorrow.
Yeah. That's why even though it's intended to apply, to rehire people. But I think for all intents and purposes, in terms of the calculations for the loan itself, I think you'd be treated the same as all the other entities under the program too.
Okay, good intel for sure. Again, folks, *3 on your phone will get you in line to talk directly to our director. Yes, sir.
I'm confused, and maybe the guys can clarify for me, but it was my understanding for the sole proprietor, individual only employee is him, that even though he may not have the tax forms that are necessary, because I don't think they're required, he has to, but I may be wrong, but I believe you basically have to show what your draws are from your business for that period of time from February forward, that you would calculate your payroll for anybody else. And then you're going to have to swear an affidavit that what you have submitted is true and correct, and there are going to be, there are punishments for falsifying an affidavit that are built into the bill. So you're going to have to go through your bank account, pull out your draws, show what you've done, and then swear that's the truth. And your salary, the way I understood it, if you're just the only person that's paid by this business, you still can get it forgiven at the end of the period. But I may be wrong, but that's what I was told when we did this the first time we on the floor and other places, that the one man guy, like the fishing guide, he could submit his draws that he's made for himself, even though he has no other employees. And there may not be a tax form that shows that, but if he's willing to swear to it, they're supposed to make him the loan. Now, is that right, Chamber? Or am I mistaken about that?
That's my interpretation too. But I think we're still waiting for guidance from Treasury and SBA in terms of the actual specifics. In terms of the bill itself, I know that's the way the bill was intended.
Yeah, and one of the things I think we're running up against is bankers are following a lot of the procedures they make on making the loans themselves.
Yeah.
And they may be requiring way more than is actually intended to be required. But that just takes patience and trying to go to where the information is on the website and take it with you to the bank and try to show them what you're doing. They starting out nervous about these loans. They're going to get better as it goes along.
Yeah, and I think in terms of applying for the loan, you follow the same formula that other small businesses file. You basically calculate your average payroll expenses, which is just yourself, and what your costs and qualifying expenses, and submit the loan or application. I mean.
Good deal, good info. Again, *3 will get you online to talk directly to our friends here with the Chamber of Commerce. And let me take a little pause for the cause here for a second and remind folks that Congressman Carter's office stands ready to assist however we can. We've got 3 offices ready and here for you. We've got an office in Round Rock, 512-246-1600. Got another office in Temple, Texas, 254-933-1392. And, of course, our office here in D.C., where I'm at, 202-225-3864. And you can always go to our website, and that's open 24/7, www.carter.house.gov. We've got a coronavirus update page that we're updating on a regular basis to ensure you've got all the best info, and we stand ready to assist however we can. I'm going to ask one of my friends from the Chamber, what's the Chamber's website? What's the best way for them to reach you guys?
Just uschamber.com. Take you straight to.
And then, of course, SBA.gov is the website that you go through to work with SBA and stuff. And again, you can't miss any of the coronavirus stuff on any website these days. We're going big and bold with it. So right at the top, right in your face for sure. So.
And Treasury.gov.
Treasury.gov. There you go. I got a great question from Amberl. I think I'm pronouncing that name correct. And we may have touched on it earlier, but definitely want to reiterate it if we can, is how much coverage how long is the coverage from the PPP? So, Amberl, you are on with our friends from the Chamber.
Thank you. It's Amberly.
Oh, Amberly, sorry.
Yeah, the question is no problem. As a small business owner, I mean, right now we're okay, but I own an engineering firm in my business. We think it's going to start declining here in the next month or so because of COVID. So I want to make sure I have the money to pay my employees. So I'm just wondering, how many months does the payroll protection plan cover? Because it's not super clear from what I've understood from the lender.
Yeah, according to the legislation itself, it's February 15th, 2020 to June 30th, 2020. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion and speculation about what happens after June 30th, 2020, but the bill does not speak to itself. Speak to that. So for all intents and purposes, it's February to June 30th, 2020. And then again, you can choose which 8 weeks in that period you want to count. Logic would suggest that this crisis is not going to be over by June 30th. So I would expect, and the Congress would know better than I do, there would be some sort of an extension to that deadline.
Got another.
Yeah, I think we'll revisit it.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, folks, we've not seen the last legislation on this challenge facing our nation right now. So more to come, I'm sure. So again, it's Grady, your moderator for this afternoon's teletown hall with Congressman John Carter, your representative here, and 3 of our friends from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Got a question from Alan. Owns a cleaning company, independent contractors. Where can he seek the most immediate financial relief? So, Alan, you are on with Jack, John, and Dan, and Congressman Carter with Chamber of Commerce.
Well, great. Thank you, gentlemen, for holding this live for those of us that are out working hard, trying to make a living every day. My question pertains to a little more specific hospitality industry. I own a cleaning company that was on a vertical climb of unseen proportion just as March rolled around, and that we provide cleaning services for companies like Expedia and Airbnb, and we go in and turn units so that the next guest can arrive, and there's a great deal of expense behind it, and that we provide the linens, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and then I hire subcontractors to go and provide the work. Well, with this epidemic being so intense, and specifically to travelers and hospitality industry, the hotel industry's hurt just equally as bad. But I have a cleaning company that had gone almost 100% hospitality turns, and we basically have had to shut down, furlough our staff, our subcontractors, yet we still have ongoing expenses, including whatever was left at the end of the month would be mine to have for my personal expenses. So I'm similar to your previous caller with the stylist, but mine's more affected by the hospitality industry just having shut down. No planes, no trains, no automobiles, everybody stay home. It's just devastated my company. So I'm wondering if there are any insights with regards to this, and if I could go through some sort of a cycle in the loan process through SBA as being in the hospitality industry.
And forgive me, but did you say at the beginning you were an independent contractor?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I mean, I think the fact that you are in the hospitality industry is not a factor in terms of applying for the loan. So starting tomorrow, and I would start early, you can apply for economic injury disaster loan. Well, you can apply for that now. You can apply for the PPP program starting tomorrow. The other thing you could do is apply for the EIDL program's emergency grant program, which would give you $10,000 right off the bat, and that's a loan you don't even have to, or a grant you don't even have to receive a loan to get that. So those are two things I would suggest. Start applying for the PPP program. See if you can qualify for the economic injury disaster loan program. That it's going to take some time, but it could provide you up to I think it's $2 million and up to $200,000 without any sort of a personal guarantee.
And you mentioned the EIDL loan, and that's a $10,000 grant. Is that correct?
That's the emergency grant, right?
Right. And is that grant funding taxable?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. That's just.
And do you know? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, they're just the grants are taxable. For the loan part, the forgiveness amount from the PPP is not taxable.
And do you get a sense of I'm looking at a lot of questions here on our call screeners, and we're getting a lot of questions about obviously the delays that folks are experiencing when they work with SBA, when they go with the bank. Do we have any sense of where the real logjam is, or is it kind of all over the place? And what sense do you have of how things can really get moving? Because this really seems to be one of the big themes I'm hearing and I'm seeing from a lot of these calls right now.
We're hearing it too. There's a tremendous amount of frustration out there. It's all over the lot. It's just, setting up the website, getting the application forms, together, making sure they are coordinating between SBA and Treasury Department. There's some confusion on some of the features of these programs. Some interpret the legislation a little differently than others. So look, I'm not minimizing the amount of frustration. All I can tell you is that I'm told that it seems like it's getting better with each passing day, but it's all relative. Like I said, the SBA's loan website actually crashed over the weekend, and just the fact that here we are, like I said, 10 days after the bill was signed into law, already over $70 billion worth of loans have been processed. It just gives you a sense of the magnitude of not only the nature of the crisis, but how quickly they're scrambling to try to put this together. I mean, this is a $2.2 trillion piece of legislation that's larger than our entire federal budget. And, they're trying to put it together, within days. But it's just a lot of, very technical type things. There's some legal interpretations, confusion over that. So yeah, it's very messy. I'm not minimizing that in any way, shape, or form, but, people are just doing the best they can to try to make this work as quickly as possible.
And speaking of folks doing the best they can, looking at all these incredible questions from our folks back in Central Texas, and again, *3, get you in the line to talk to one of our screeners and get you on there talking with our friends from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Got a great question from Eric about business unit using the PPP, but still maybe having to let employees go afterwards. So, Eric, I'm going to pass you over to John, Jack, and Dan with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
Hi, gentlemen. Thank you for taking the call. I've been maintaining my staff since this has been going on, and so all through February, through March, now through the first part of April, and I'm burning through my operational savings account for all this. So if you look at an 8-week period, and I go from mid-February through I got April, May, or March, April, and by the time I hit May, I'm well past my 8 weeks of the PPP, and quite honestly, I can't continue to. I'm depleted right now. I need the PPP to try to get repleted so I can make my mortgage payments. Right. And so my concern is, once May hits, I've already burned through my 8 weeks, and I'm going to have to lay my staff off. If I do that out of necessity, since I'm past the 8 weeks, do I still qualify for? I can prove I used all that money for staff and keeping the business open. The things that it qualifies us for. Would I be running into a problem of not having it turned into a grant because they're no longer employed? Come May or whatever it is.
Yeah, because the incentive is to try to get you to either keep your employees on payroll between now and June 30th, or to restore back up to 80% before the end of June. In the meantime, have you actually applied for the PPP program yet?
He's listening in right now, but let's presume he has. So.
Okay. I would also, let's assume he has. I would also look into the emergency grant program I mentioned before under the EIDL loan program, as well as the EIDL loan program itself.
Well, that's a great intel. Keep going back to the PPP, because that's the one we're getting a lot of questions on, and I know a lot of folks online, I'm sure, have applied. A lot of folks have not, and again, we'd encourage you to do so ASAP. Deborah's got a question about what kind of paperwork is needed and how to account for 2019. So, Deborah, you are on with our friends from the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes. When I pulled up the loan application online, it looked like most of our documentation was for 2019. And what I'm hearing from you today is February 2020. So I'm confused.
Yeah, I am. My understanding is they're looking for information from 2020. Are you sure you're not looking at the seasonal employees section? Because that's the 2019.
I don't think so. Our bank is BB&T, and they were assisting us. We're actually closed because we were deemed non-necessary. And I had 2 drivers who were independent contractors, myself, and I'm in the same boat as the men who just took draws until April 1st, when we actually started doing a payroll check. So what are you thinking I need to show to put on that loan?
Well, I think I think primarily for the PPP program, it's essentially you need to certify several things in good faith, as I mentioned before. Economic uncertainty. You need the loan to support your operations. The funds will be used to retain workers, maintain payroll, make mortgage, lease, and utility payments, things like that. And by and large, it's a good faith certification.
Good faith indeed. Hey, folks, it's Grady, your moderator for this afternoon's Teletown Hall with three of our friends in the Chamber of Commerce and Congressman John Carter. I know a big question we're getting, from our business owners, but also from workers, is folks that are unemployed, and do we have any sense of when the unemployed are going to begin to start seeing financial help? You guys got any sense of how that's going to work out?
Well, I mean, that's run through the state, so it really depends on how quickly Texas can process the assistance. In terms of the actual, legislative requirements, those are all in place. So I'd like to think, by the end of the month, if it's not sooner, but I just don't know how Texas's unemployment system works.
And I think it's fair to assume if you're unemployed and you haven't filed for unemployment, you probably should do so as soon as you can.
Yeah.
So it does
Hey, Grady?
Yes, sir.
That previous lady, she said she had two independent contractors that were doing work with her, and then her salary. She would just be applying for herself. The two independent contractors would go separately for their own businesses, is the way I understand it. Isn't that right?
Yeah. That's my understanding, yeah.
So she could still, and they go to 19 if you have no evidence for 20 that you can submit to show what you paid yourself for the same period last year. But if you've got evidence of what you're paying yourself, and track it so you can say, look, I've been paying myself this amount of money every month, then that should be enough evidence for them with your, sworn affidavit that this is true. That should be enough evidence for them to make a loan for that woman's share of the draw.
Right. Yeah, that's my understanding.
You would have to go about it independently.
Right. Maybe I misunderstood her question, but yeah, if you don't have documentation for this year, then you can submit last year's documentation.
Because I suppose it is important to note that the tax deadline was extended until June, so theoretically there's probably a lot of folks that haven't quite filed their taxes yet or whatever documentation that businesses need. So there's probably a delay on there that's incorporated with that. Another question I'm seeing a lot of from some of the screen calls here, and we're going to kick it over to Jennifer with it, is some questions about the 8-week window within the PPP and hiring issues with that. So I'm going to kick it over to Jennifer, and Jennifer, you're on with Jack, John, and Dan with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you so much for taking my question. I own a small business practice, and we applied for the PPP loan today. We furloughed our employees in mid-May and reduced some hours of other employees. So my question is, we're anticipating not being able to see patients again until late May, possibly even mid-June. So we were going to bring all of the employees back mid-June. Am I understanding that we can wait until mid-June, late June, to bring those employees back and still qualify for forgiveness if all other stuff, remains true as well? Or do we have to bring those employees back immediately?
No, you have until June 30th to bring them back.
So it's into that 4-month window between February, June on that.
Right.
I suppose, what, turn it over to my friends at the Chamber. Been working with businesses throughout your time. We're in this unprecedented situation right now. What's the number one thing, beyond the loans and the SBA, what's the number one thing that you'd want to tell businesses right now about how to kind of get through this really challenging time?
Yeah, other than, trying to be as patient as possible under extraordinarily difficult circumstances, I think, a lot of people, have, for good reasons, a lot of, expectations that they're going to be able to get a lot of these loans pretty quickly, and obviously, it takes a little bit of while. Takes a little bit of time. I mean, it usually takes at least a week to hear from an SBA loan officer, and then even after that, I'm hearing stories about, it takes another 3 to 5 weeks after that to actually get the approval. So it's just can't move things fast enough. So I'm not going to. It's not a criticism or anything like that. It's just the way. It's just reality. And then I guess the other thing there's some confusion on is you can't apply for both the EIDL loan program and the PPP program for the same expenses. You can do it for different expenses, but it can't be the same expenses. But I'd say those are probably the top things I'm hearing. I don't know, John, are you hearing anything other than that?
No, that's absolutely correct. It's look, we're trying to provide, and I know Congressman Carter is, and his team, his staff, U.S. Chamber, and all our great chamber partners are trying to provide the best, most accurate information possible, because we know that you are all out there making real-time decisions based on this information. So, but it's ever changing, and that's why we're all working double overtime to get this information out. I know Judge Carter is. I know Jack and the DC team are, and anything we can do to help, please reach out to us or Congressman Carter's office.
And remind us again your all's website, please.
That's uschamber.com.
uschamber.com, and of course carter.house.gov. And let me give you again our office numbers. Round Rock 512-246-1600. Temple 254-933-1392. Your nation's capital, Washington, D.C. 202-225-3864. I'm Grady. I've been your moderator for this call. It's been an absolute privilege, but unfortunately we are out of time. So before we leave, though, I want to pass it over to Congressman Carter for some closing remarks. So on to you, boss.
Yeah, and I want to thank everybody for tuning in and trying to get through this confusion. If you look at those numbers we're dealing with, they're huge numbers. This is a rescue attempt that is being launched with a bunch of agencies that are being overwhelmed. We apologize for that, but we really ought to be realizing we're talking about small businesses literally all over the United States. When in reality, Texas could probably use the whole amount of what has been authorized. So it is going to be hectic, and I apologize for the hectic. That's why we're doing these things every week, trying to at least, like I say, go ask your banker, sit down with them, work with them. It's important for you. I want to thank the Chamber people for being here for us. They've been with us on this quite a bit in the last couple of weeks, and God bless them. I really appreciate them for helping us out. Folks, I appreciate you calling in. We're in a real crisis in this country, but we're going to get through it. We're going to get our economy cranked back up. We have to all grit our teeth and fight forward. That's just what we have to do. This is not caused by anybody, except maybe the Chinese, but it wasn't caused by anybody as far as it's a natural disaster. We just got to work through it. But I don't think the modern world has ever faced a situation like we're in right now. So let's just, the money will be there. It is definitely authorized to be spent. And you're not jammed on that in any way. And by the way, I think prayer helps, especially as we go into this Easter weekend and Passover weekend. So pray for the country, pray for the Congress, pray for the President, Vice President. We're all trying, and we're trying hard. And I appreciate each and every one of you for being with us. Have a great Easter weekend, if that be something you celebrate. And it too will be different. We'll get through this, folks. We'll make it. God bless you. Grady, thanks for your help.
All right, folks. Thanks for listening in. Thanks to our friends at the Chamber of Commerce, and thanks to you, boss. And Central Texas, stay in the fight. That's all you can do. We'll be there for you. Thanks, folks.
Yep. Good to be with you. Thanks.